You know the topic? The Logos mysteries from Ephesus to the first Goetheanum, the Metamorphosis of Double-Dodecahedral foundation stone, and the birth of the new mysteries. So presentation done by Florian Sydow from Hawaii, Hawaiian Anthroposophical Society. So Florian is founding member of Kahumana Farm and Community on island of Oahu, Hawaii. Florian has served as vice chairman of the Anthroposophical Society in Hawaii for many years. A long-time student of Goethean science and anthroposophy, offering presentations and workshops on various spiritual scientific themes. Over 30 years of experience in the design and building of organic architecture, married to a Waldorf teacher, which is Cindy Sydow, and father of 3 Waldorf graduates. Yeah, dear Florian, yeah, if you're ready, it's over to you.
Thank you very much. I want to begin by expressing my gratitude to Andre and the Chicago branch for hosting these presentations. And I want to start by just saying a few things about the theme, this 100-year anniversary of the celebration of the Christmas conference, which was in a very humble setting. The first Goetheanum had burned a year before on exactly this day that we're living in right now, the 31st, New Year's Eve of 2022, 2023. And investigations revealed that this was due to arson, an arson attack. And the fire was ignited in the same part of the Goetheanum, the south wing, they call it the White Hall. Just outside of it, there was a hole found in the upper part of the wall where it meets the roof. And there was signs of petroleum as well as a wick that's used for boat building and stuff that were found there. And the persons who were able to look into that opening could see that the fire was raging inside between the walls of the Goetheanum. So the person who was responsible and who was kind of, you could say, an instrument of others, knew the building, was an insider, so to speak. And this is not unusual for these secret societies. The Jesuits were known for infiltrating their opponents in the Freemasonic side. And these two parties, Rudolf Steiner indicated, were responsible for the fire. Anyways, during that event, a year later, Steiner, in the very last of the days, which was the new year, January 1st, 2024, he spoke these words of beginning of a cosmic turning point in time, which is a very powerful saying because it harkens back to the mystery of Golgotha, which he often referred to as the turning point in time. And I'll try to initially go over what led up to the building of the Goetheanum. But before that, I just wanted to have this verse or meditation, you could say, that would raise our hearts and minds to the Sophia being, which is there in the word anthroposophy. Steiner spoke of this being that's linked to the Sophia, anthroposophia. He spoke very rarely of this, which makes it all the more of an esoteric seed impulse that's important for the future. Beginning with the earth phase of evolution, the wisdom of the outer cosmos becomes an inner wisdom in the human being. Internalized in this way, it becomes the seed of love. Wisdom is a prerequisite for love. Love is the result of wisdom that has been reborn in the eye. So this is related to the transformation of the astral body into the future spirit selfhood. Spirit selfhood has to do with the purification of the astral body, where the Luciferic forces are sort of the tempters who lead to pride and selfishness, but also are benefactors, setting the stage for human freedom. And that the higher stage of spirit self, or manas, as it's also called, is where the Sophia being, the archetypal world soul, actually incorporates into the human being. So this being overlights our higher destiny. In the book of Revelation, she's depicted as the woman that stands upon the moon under her feet, is crowned with 12 stars, and is clothed with the sun. And there's a dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns that seeks to devour this child that has to do with a cosmic Christmas birth, which is what this conference was meant to embody, held as it was during the Holy Nights. So the dragon has to do with a regression back to the old root races at a time when humanity is meant to rise above the group soul and the racial and ethnic bond that is given by heredity, and more of an instinctual love to a higher community that's consciously woven between individuals who are on their way to the higher self. I'm here wanting to look back to the Munich Congress that was held in 1907. This was during the Pentecost season, and they had these yearly. The last year before this, it was in Paris, and Rudolf Steiner was the one who choreographed the events and prepared them, and it was an opportunity to bring the Western esoteric wisdom to expression artistically. And this included then the 7 Rosicrucian seals, or sometimes they're also called the apocalyptic seals, which were displayed around the room between columns that were cut out of cardboard or something. And there you see the capitals that would later show up in the Malchbau and finally in the first Goetheanum. And you have there Annie Besant and Marie Steiner, Rudolf Steiner, and of course many others. And Munich was where Steiner would later actually want to build the first Goetheanum, but the authorities there weren't cooperating and were opposing it. The land had already been bought, etc. But one of the participants was Waldorf teacher Karl Stockmeyer, and he would later ask Rudolf Steiner whether these pillars and these seals were related to an architectural impulse. But before going into that, I just wanted to say also that during the 4 days of that and evenings of that conference, it also included sacred drama of Aloysius, which was by the French author Edward Schuré, who was a good friend of Marie Steiner. And Steiner had rewritten the text that Marie Steiner had translated. And that was then an impulse that led to the launching of the mystery plays in the years that followed. So also 10 days after this, in the esoteric lessons, which Steiner had started in 1904, he let the participants know that from then on, they would need to choose between the Western masters that he was representing, more specifically Christian Rosenkreuz and the Master Jesus, and on the other hand, the Eastern master that Ani Besant and the movement of theosophy centered in Adyar, India. So that was the beginning of a shift that would later lead to a more complete rift when Krishnamurti affair came into play, which began around 1909. And then Rudolf Steiner split from the Theosophical Society. Here is an expression of the Rosicrucian impulse that arose out of this question that Stockmeyer had with Rudolf Steiner. And the Rosicrucian mysteries took place in the late Middle Ages and into the consciousness soul period. And this was a time deep into the Kali Yuga when the mysteries had largely been in decline, and that they were now much more hidden. They were not accessible as in the old days on the physical path, but required a spiritual path. So Rudolf Steiner says of this building that this is the first Rosicrucian temple that was actually on the earth. And you can kind of see in this next view that this was actually a miniature model that in order to be able to enter it, the pillars were raised up onto 2 walls that were arced around the center in an oval form. And this was actually a meeting place for a anthroposophical group that would meet there. And Rudolf Steiner was involved in the laying of the foundation stone for this building. I believe they called themselves the St. Francis of Assisi group. So here you have in the right side of this slide the 7 Rosicrucian seals, which are a valuable means of meditating one's way into the imaginative world. Imagination was the stage where we rise up into the astral world, not in the sleep state, but wakefully. And it requires a form of heart thinking. The heart is always dreaming, always living in images, but if we wake up in the heart and learn to weave together the light of thinking and the warmth of feeling, then we can begin to enter this realm of imagination. And it's a language of symbols that can be learned. And that's one of the stages of Rosicrucian initiation. The seven seals, the first one is at the top. That's the Saturday seal. So if you were to meditate on these during the 7 days of the week, you would start with that Saturday seal. And at the bottom is the Sunday seal. And I won't go into this much more here. We'll see more of these during the course of this presentation. But these have a very deep significance. Christian Rosenkreuz, Rudolf Steiner tells us, had a former incarnation as the beloved disciple who is the author of the Gospel of John, the most esoteric of the Gospels, as well as the book of Revelation. So that's where the connection is between Rosicrucian and Johannine Christianity. So this is a scene where Rudolf Steiner is marking the spot up at the upper left where the foundation stone is to be laid for this building. On the right upper side, you have a photograph of the actual foundation stone itself. And within it was this document that was written on hide. And it has itself a very deep significance. You can see in the middle there the double-dodecahedral form with the Rosicrucians, ex Deo nascimur, in Christo murimur, per spiritum sanctum revivissimus. And these pyrite crystals were also suspended in it, a larger one in the small dodecahedral and a smaller one on the other side. These are natural formation in the pyrite world. Rudolf Steiner had dug the first few shovels for the excavation for this. And the workmen worked during the day, members in the evening, to create a pit that was descended through 9 steps. And at the bottom, a place was prepared to receive this double dodecahedral stone. And it was then lowered in. Marie Steiner brought 12 red roses and laid them upon it, along with 1 white rose. So the mystery of love was very much a part of this foundation stone, that one could say it has to do with the mystery of the 5, the mystery of the 4, the 4th stage of evolution related to the earth is the mystery of birth and death. But we're preparing as anthroposophists, those who are awake to its goals and aims, the 5th future stage, which is the Jupiter condition, or in the book of Revelation, it's called the New Jerusalem or the Golden City. And that 5th stage has to do also with the mystery of evil. And this is why the sculptural group, which was not installed in the building yet at the time when it was destroyed by fire, embodies a new approach to the mystery of good and evil that's threefold rather than dualistic. So here you have on the bottom right, the place on the stage where this foundation stone was to be laid. So it was in between where the podium was to be and the sculptural group, which would be behind it in the pillars, between those pillars, two sets of 6 pillars. So when Rudolf Steiner began this contribution at the foundation laying, which took place September 20th, 1913, he said for the first time, as part of what he referred to as the 5th gospel, which is the counterpart to the microcosmic Lord's Prayer, which is on the right of this slide. Amen. Evil holds sway. Witness of egoity becomes free. Selfhood guilt through others incurred, experienced in the daily bread, wherein the will of the heavens does not rule, in that man forgot your names, ye fathers in the heavens. And he just went on to say that just as the 4 gospels found their way from east to west, this 5th gospel, which is the gospel of knowledge, would now reflect back from west to east as a kind of answer. He refers to this as the macrocosmic Lord's Prayer. And just as the microcosmic prayer and the 4 gospels have to do with the mysteries of earth, that this 5th gospel has to do together with this stone that was laid in the ground, this stone of love, is connected with the moon and with Jupiter, with the New Jerusalem, as the 4 gospels are connected with the earth, the gospel of knowledge and the building the New Jerusalem. So we're meant to participate in the building of the New Jerusalem. Now, Lucifer, Rudolf Steiner tells us, at one time was a brother of the Christ when the sun was still in a planetary stage. And the father, mother aspect of the divinity then chose the Christ being to become the ruler of the emerging new solar system. And Lucifer rebelled against that impulse. And as a result, Lucifer lost his place on the planet Venus and was cast down to the earth. Nevertheless, through this, Lucifer set the stage for human freedom. And Lucifer longs to find his way back to Venus. So here we see how Venus, together with the sun in their conjunctions and oppositions, creates this 5-pointed star, a kind of cosmic dance that's accompanied by the music of the spheres. On the right, it tells you the cycles involved, and it shows how the rose down below there is based on this pentagonal 5-foldness as reflected in the realm of the plants. And at the bottom right, how the Goetheanum was fashioned out of this same pentagonal star that's related to our etheric body. We can stand in that five-pointed star. And here we have this impulse of Lucifer embodied in the sculptural group that Rudolf Steiner, together with Edith Marion, worked on for years. And Steiner said of this, these Luciferic beings who have brought man freedom also make it possible for him, if he so wills, to turn it to account in order to understand the Christ. Then the Luciferic spirits are cleansed and purified in the fire of Christianity, and the wrong done to the earth by them is changed into blessing. Freedom has been attained, but it will also be carried into the spiritual sphere as a blessing. That man is capable of this, that he is capable of understanding Christ, that Lucifer resurrected in a new form can unite with the Christ as the good spirit. This, as prophecy still, was told by Christ himself to those around him when he said, "Ye shall be illumined by the new spirit, by the Holy Spirit." This Holy Spirit is none other than the Spirit through whom man can apprehend what Christ has wrought. Christ desired not merely to work, but also to be apprehended, to be understood. Therefore, the sending of the Spirit by whom men are inspired, the sending of the Holy Spirit, is implicit in Christianity in the spiritual sense. Whitsuntide belongs inseparably to Easter. This Holy Spirit is none other than the Luciferic spirit resurrected now in higher, purer glory, the spirit of independent understanding, wisdom inwoven. And with all of these, it's helpful to dive into this deeper, which can be worked with in this small little booklet that has the lecture, The Deed of Christ. So this is taken from a lecture given by a colleague of mine here in Honolulu, Van James. Was given, I believe, in New Zealand, Christchurch, I believe, in a series of several lectures that were called Art, Awakener of Consciousness, Humanizer of Society. And here he's showing, based on Rudolf Steiner's indications, it's not the best clear printing here, how these different arts are related to, at the bottom, architecture to the physical body, the sculptural arts to the etheric body, painting to the astral body, music to the ego, spirit self to drama and poetry, and dance, which would of course be eurythmy in the anthroposophical sense, to life spirit. And for the future, the new art is the art of community building, of the social art that leads to spirit man, to Atman. So these can also be referred to as Manas, Buddhi, Atman. They're like the golden triangle that the Christ impulse gave to humanity, that is always there waiting for us to discover. So here was that kind of community building in process. People from around the nations and peoples of Europe who were at war. A year after this laying of the foundation stone in mid-1914, war broke out that lasted into 1919 and late 1919. And here you have people from these same countries working together to bring this artistic impulse that involves a redemption of Lucifer, a path to the Holy Spirit. through love, working with their hands and in a heart-filled way to bring beauty which complements truth and goodness. This is a kind of little tragic episode that occurred during the construction of the Goetheanum. There was a young boy, he was 7-year-old at the time. Eo Feist. His mother worked in a cantina there, helping with serving food. His father had been called to the war. And this young boy was often seen helping his mother, delivering things, had a little wagon that he used to transport things around. But he got to know a lot of the people who were at that time living and working in Dornau, Switzerland. But one day, a call went out because he didn't return. Didn't return home to his mother. And after long searching, they discovered what had happened is that somebody who was moving house and had a big, huge transport wagon that was overfilled had, on the way down the hill, turned over and fell on this boy. Rudolf Steiner spoke of how this being, that this wasn't just an accident, that this being wanted to unite himself with this Goetheanum, to give it an etheric sheath, which Rudolf Steiner also did as the master builder of this building. So here you have the completed building in an aerial view on the left and a photograph on the right, together with the floor plan, with one of the largest stages in Europe. And here you have beauty as the complement of truth. And it was meant to embody anthroposophy in artistic form. The outside of the building was made of oak and sculpted. And there was a slate on the roof. And here you have a closer look at that outer view. In those early days, it was called the Johannesbau, the John building. And on the one hand, this related to Johannes of the mystery plays, but in a deeper sense, it was meant to relate to the beloved disciple and was dedicated to the house of the word, to the Logos mysteries. And Rudolf Steiner spoke of how the temple is man. True temples are always related to the human being in some way. And so Rudolf Steiner's task was really to bring these Logos mysteries into the age of the Holy Spirit. When you entered the Goetheanum from the west, you went up some stairs that you could enter from either side. They spiraled up, and that led you to the top of the back of the seating area. And then you could either walk down the aisle in the middle or the aisles on either side of the seating. And behind you was this red glow if you were there in the day, especially when the sun was setting in the west or descending in the west. So this was then a face that was really the face of an initiate looking together with you towards the stage. And here you have the prominence of the 16-petaled lotus in the throat region, which has to do with the mysteries of the word, the mysteries of the logos. And on the left panel, you have this crossing of the threshold, crossing the abyss, and the three beasts down below who posed a danger, because when you cross the threshold, thinking, feeling, and willing separate. And now you have to harmonize them outside of the body, which initially holds them together. And Waldorf education helps this by laying the foundation of willing in the first 7 years, feeling in the second 7 years, thinking in the third. But not everybody has that kind of biographical help. On the right side, you have someone who's successfully representing the human being crossing with the help of the angelic realm to the other side across the abyss. Down below in the middle, you have Michael with the dragon. That's in the human heart. Michael wants to take up his new residence in the human heart. He's let go of the cosmic intelligence starting in the 4th century already. It started to arrive on the earth around the 12th, 13th century when the scholasticism came about. So each of us have to undertake this battle. Each of us have the opportunity to purify the heart and understand that the heart is related to the sun and can become an inner sun, can shine like we saw in that woman standing on the moon, crowned with the stars. So here you have a artistic rendering of the Goetheanum. You can see how small the people are there on the bottom right in relation to the base of the pillars, which were huge. And here you have the middle painting that was there above the sculptural group down below in the very middle of the little cupola. Here you have some of the painting scenes that were there on the right side of that middle depiction of the representative man between Luciferic and Ahrimanic forces and these different ages of civilization. So that you had this world of color. This is related again to the astral world, a world of images and pictures and old forms of initiation represented by the Egyptian and the Greek initiates and the representative contemporary epoch where we have to deal with the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic in a more powerful way. And of course, the Faust being that Goethe wove into his drama in the later, more mature years in part 1 and 2. That's where the word ish, the only written word in that entire Goetheanum, the word relates to the human I, which has a lower and a higher self. That's why you have the death down below and the spiritual child up above and the blessing hand from above if we ascend to the higher self. The mysteries of the word have a long history that harkens back to the ancient Atlantean time, when the human beings of that time still heard the sound of the Tao ringing. And this ancient heritage was preserved by Chinese sages and embodied in Taoism. So we see last echoes of that wisdom there. And it was also taken up in Egypt, where we have this Ankh symbol, which relates to the Tao. And I have then this Christmas ornaments that Steiner recommended that can be fashioned from copper, that are often put on the tree. And you can see where that Tao symbol is. You have the fourfold at the bottom. That's the fourfold human being, physical, etheric, astral, ego. Then you have above it the triangle, Manas, Buddhi, Atman, or spirit self, life spirit, spirit man. You have the Christ between Alpha and Omega. The Tarot, which was related to the Egyptian mysteries, is in between, related to the letters of the alphabet. And those are related again to the word. And then you have the planetary images that rise from old Saturn at the bottom left of that tree to old sun to old moon. And then Earth relates to Mars and Mercury, first half Mars half, then Mercury half. We're in the Mercury half, then Jupiter, Venus, and then you have Vulcan, which is Atman, related there to the star at the top. So these mysteries were migrated from Atlantis during the fifth stage. They were brought to the West. And at the bottom there, you see a symbol of those mysteries, which were very much a part of the mysteries that were cultivated by Scythianus, which is one of the initiates involved in inspiring Rosicrucianism. And his impulse is much more hidden than others. But you can see how this is there in the ground plan of the Goetheanum, the east-west axis, the circle at the top related to the 12 pillars, where the 13th would be in the middle, and you have seats there below those 12 pillars for the 12 bodhisattvas, who together represent the Holy Spirit. And here I'm trying to bring what I believe to be a plan B that Rudolf Steiner had written into the first Goetheanum. And he gave a strong hint in the first lecture that he gave on Christmas Eve, which began the Christmas conference. He gave this sketch that's shown on the bottom left. And he said that the ancient Indians, of who were still clairvoyant, experienced the entire earth as related to the human head. And where the earth was opened upward to the sun, this was related to where the head is opened to the heart. And you can see with this cross-section of the human head how it relates to a cross-section of the Goetheanum. The cerebrum is related to the big cupola, the cerebellum to the small cupola. Steiner indicated when Buddha was enlightened under the Bodhi tree, it really means he was enlightened under the cerebellum, which is like a tree. It grows, and it's related to the moon. And the moon, clairvoyance really comes from the back of the head. So there's deep mysteries related to this Goetheanum. And here you have a closer view of that. In the place where the two overlap, you have the pineal gland. And in the Goetheanum, that was related to where the podium was located, where the word was spoken. Here again, the Logos mysteries that Steiner was working to renew, I should say. And the 7 stages of evolution which govern all time, smaller and larger cycles, were expressed by the 2 times 7 pillars in the large cupola area that supported that dome. And on the other, you had the world of space in the east, related to the number 12. Here, Steiner gives some words that help to understand the significance of the pineal gland. A man must develop certain organs for his higher development. To this and certain concentrations are done in yoga exercises. When a man concentrates on a point between the eyes at the root of the nose with the thought, I am, he develops the organ that we call the 2-petaled lotus flower, and that makes him into an I. But it isn't enough that the organ of the ego is developed in man, so that the higher self can stream into him to make him into a higher being. We find the organ for this where a vertical line from the top of the head crosses a horizontal line through the root of the nose, or at this, a little above it. This organ is the pineal gland. Man makes a connection with the divine self in the world through the pineal gland. And you can discover some deep secrets related to this in the lecture Etherization of the Blood, where the pineal gland becomes the grail vessel and it can shine like a little inner sun. And Steiner tells us that what is the pineal gland in this incarnation is a metamorphosis of our heart from our past incarnation. And that we can create a lemniscatory relationship between the heart and this pineal gland that crosses in the larynx and can give rise to the mysteries of the word. Here we're showing how there's a direct relationship to the Goetheanum and Solomon's temple. You may remember in the Gospels where when the mystery of Golgotha took place, the veil of the temple, which was a 4-colored veil relating to the 4 elements, was torn asunder. Usually only the high priest once a year entered that Holy of Holies, which was a cubical space, and there uttered the secret name of God, the Yahweh being. And you can see down below how the 5-pointed star, which has to do with Manas, was inscribed into the architecture. And that the little cupola of the building is related to what was the Holy of Holies. That cubical space, the Holy of Holies, is related to the New Jerusalem, the Golden City, which has measurements in the book of Revelation that relate to a cube. We'll hear more about this. Also, in the Goetheanum, the mystery plays reveal the secrets of initiation in an artistic form. This was a painting that was meant to go in the first Goetheanum. It's very detailed, was painted by Anna May with directions from Rudolf Steiner. and one can relate the words of the foundation stone meditation, ex Deo Nascimur, to the left panel, in Christo Morimur to the middle panel, and Per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimus to the right panel. There are two converging streams of time. One comes out of the past, that's the etheric stream, from past into the present and on to the future, and one from the future in the opposite direction, the astral stream. That's why one can get to know the future before it happens. And these two converged in the eternal present of the mystery of Golgotha, the turning point of time, which is when the tree of life was restored that grows out of the tree. And the blood that flowed into the earth was received by the three mothers who represent the old Saturn, the old sun, and the old moon heritage that is there within the earth. And that those three are then given the impulse to, in the future, be transformed into Manas, Buddhi, Atman. Old moon into Manas, old sun into Buddhi, and old Saturn into Atman, spirit man, life spirit, and spirit self. So again, this is something one could devote a whole several presentations to. But at the very right-hand side, you have the initiation of Christian Rosenkreuz, and you have the woman standing on the moon, crowned with the stars, with Michael and the dragon beneath her. And on both sides of the middle, you have Moses looking back to the burning bush, where he hears the I am that I am. And on the other side, you have Saul, who became Paul on his road to Damascus and was a forerunner of the new vision of the etheric Christ. And above Christian Rosenkreuz is the dove representing the Holy Spirit. On the left side of the mystery of Golgotha, you have the Buddha being incorporated into the archai, which is the being up above that pillar. And on the right side, you have the Johannes being, the beloved disciple who's holding the cross. So you have these Rosicrucian mysteries especially playing an important role. And here I'm relating the 7 Rosicrucian seals to the 7 pillars in the old Goetheanum, in the larger cupola space related to these future planetary stages. And the last of these seals is this one, related to the Grail mysteries, the 7th Rosicrucian seal. And there, the Goetheanum is related to this mystery. Again, you have the cube. The cube is related to the salt crystal, which is related to thinking in the alchemical trinity of sulfur, mercury, and salt. And there you see it related to the Holy of Holies, the cube. The bottom right, you can see how the cube can be unfolded into a cross. And in this middle seal, you have the cube at the bottom, and you have the Luciferic counter forces to the creation that takes place in this realm of the Father, the ex Deo Nascimur. But through the Christ, those serpents are redeemed and raised up in this evolutionary spiral to then become from in Christo Morimur to that dove up above, the Per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimus, and the inverted chalice, where at one time the gods spoke to human beings, but that world of the stars became silent, waiting for human beings to speak to the stars. So this is the beginning of that speaking. These are the new logos mysteries, where the human being co-creates through the word, through the larynx. Rudolf Steiner, when he spoke, that speaking was a co-creation. His thinking had become selfless. He had offered up the intellect. And so this building, with that sacrifice of that 7-year-old boy and Rudolf Steiner weaving his own etheric forces with it, became a living being. And as I mentioned, it's related to the head. And in the head of a child, there's a fontanelle. So this building had a kind of fontanelle. There was an inspiration, not just imagination. Imagination is followed by inspiration. In the book of Revelation, that's embodied not in the seals, but in the trumpets. The trumpets are sounding in our time, Rudolf Steiner told us in his very last lectures on the book of Revelation. So here he speaks of the 7 mysteries. These are related to every step in evolution in a 7-fold sense. So the mysteries of birth and death are related to the earth. Mystery of evil related to the future Jupiter stage, the New Jerusalem, but already that is being prepared in our 5th post-Atlantean epoch. In the 4th age of that epoch, we recapitulate the Atlantean period, but in our 5th consciousness soul period, we're not recapitulating anymore. We're not hearkening back to the past, but we're anticipating the future New Jerusalem, the future golden city where the sun reunites with the earth. And that mystery of evil related to the 5th mystery, again, the sculptural group was the solution to that riddle, which is threefold. And so our age doesn't look so much back to the past, but anticipates that future. And that's what the laying of the foundation stone with its dodecahedron, where the 5 shows up, a marriage between microcosm and macrocosm, the human microcosm and the macrocosmic mystery associated with the 5th stage. And this is the foundation of love, because the 5th stage has to do with transforming the heritage of the old moon, the planet of wisdom, into the future planet of love. That's why this stone that was laid for the Goetheanum is called the foundation stone of love. And this was carried over to the 100th anniversary after that building was burned to the ground on New Year's Eve, the year before the Christmas conference. And that's the day we're remembering today on Christmas, or New Year's Eve, I should say. So just as we are anticipating the future, which Steiner says requires the secret of initiation, and that makes our time apocalyptic, this future-oriented situation that we're faced with, involving a crossing of the threshold, which began in the 1840s. We're collectively crossing the threshold, and we have to meet the lower guardian. The lower guardian embodies the mystery of evil. That's what the first class lessons are all about. So here we have the tragic event of the burning of the Goetheanum, which was an attack by the forces of evil. And Steiner indicated that Hiram Abiff was reborn as Lazarus, and so became the first to be initiated by Christ. With him began the stream of the middle, the center, between the streams of Cain and Abel. Over the course of time, the Cain stream found chief representatives in the Freemasonic stream, while the Able tradition came to expression in the priestly, the Jesuit stream of the Catholic Church. These two streams of humanity remained in fierce enmity. Only in one way did they unite in peace, in their hatred of the stream of the middle, the stream of the two Johns. The result of this unification of the two otherwise warring streams was a destruction of the St. John building. It was really during his very last address, which remained a fragment, on September 28th, 1924, that Rudolf Steiner spoke of this secret of the two Johns that you can be sure he held close to his heart for many, many years. So here you have some pictures of the devastation that was left behind. Rudolf Steiner had given a lecture in that building before the fire. And here we then move on to the Christmas conference that was held the year before. And the people who attended this conference had to walk past that ruins of the old Goetheanum to get to the Schreinerei, the workshop where this was held. So here I just want to point to the preparation for the new mysteries. Rudolf Steiner spoke of this in the lecture series, East in the Light of the West. You can find it in the last chapter of the book by that name, where one of the most significant spiritual councils was called by Mani. And he called together Scythianus, Zarathustra, and the Gautama Buddha. These together are the preparers of what was later to become the Rosicrucian stream. Rudolf Steiner tells us that the Mani had been the youth of Sais, who in legend lifted the veil of Isis unprepared and was struck dead, who in turn became the youth of Nine, who was raised from the dead by the Christ being, and then incarnated as Mani and subsequently as Parsival in the 9th century. And Mani in turn initiated Christian Rosenkreuz. In fact, the higher stages of Rosicrucian initiation have arisen from Mani. And in an esoteric lecture, this was given in 1911 on the 21st of January or the 23rd in the esoteric school. Steiner spoke there of, in order for this pivotal turning point of time to bear fruit in the future, there needed to be representative from the three first post-Atlantean, the ancient Indian, the ancient Persian, the Egypto-Chaldean period, had to be raised from the dead by the Christ. And those individualities then became those who would lead those three subsequent ages, which represent a metamorphosis through the Christ impulse. So the first of those was then, for the fifth age, our present age, the leading initiate is then the Mani individuality, the Parsival individuality, who prefigured this consciousness soul. This is a being who will become the new Manu in the future, the first human Manu, who will lead the sixth great epoch after the future war of all against all. then the sixth Slavic age, which we're meant to prepare with the help of anthroposophy, and the Slavic and Russian folk soul is also preparing, called the Age of Philadelphia, the Age of Aquarius, that will begin in 3573 and last for 2,160 years till about 5733. This is then through the Lazarus John being raised from the dead by the Christ. And this being, who really embodies the two Johns, will play a key role in the unfolding of that future age. And as we heard, Lazarus John is the same individuality who later incarnated as Christian Rosenkreuz on the one hand, but there's actually two individualities. And then the third future spirit man age, which is under the sign of Capricorn, that will be starting in around 5733, the seventh age. That's the daughter of Jairus, who was raised from the dead. So here we hear a little bit about that future that we're meant to prepare. In the book of Revelation, that sixth age is referred to as the Church of Philadelphia. And to the age of the church, angel of the Church of Philadelphia, write, to these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them and that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God. And he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. So who speaks this? It's the being shown with the fiery sword coming out of his mouth, this first Rosicrucian seal related to old Saturn and the future seventh stage of Atman in a way. He has a golden girdle. He has 7 stars in his right hand. And if you look at that right hand, which I've blown up down below, you can see that it's related. This is the being who rules over the stages of old Saturn, which is down there on the left. Then it rises to the old sun, then the old moon, then the Mars, first half of Earth evolution, then Mercury, the second half of Earth evolution, then the Jupiter stage, then the Venus stage, and the Vulcan stage we have to imagine as being the next beyond that. This individuality of the beloved disciple who was raised from the dead experienced a second initiation beneath the cross. He was the only disciple who was there, aside from the women who were also there. And among the very last words that were spoken from the cross to Maria Sophia, woman, behold your son. And to Lazarus John, behold your mother. So this is the beginning of a new community, not based on blood. And from that hour, that disciple took her into his home, meaning he took this Sophia being into himself. This being prefigures the mana stage we're all called to. And here you have these two John streams coming together in Lazarus John, the beloved disciple. It's at the raising of Lazarus that the soul of John the Baptist was incorporated from above. He had been beheaded. He overlighted the disciples. He had been Elijah in the past. He bears the gift of grace. Elijah worked through Naboth, an archangel. Michael was involved at that time. He was the countenance of Yahweh. He worked in the night realm with Yahweh. John, an angel incorporated in John. John gave the baptism of water, but the baptism that the beloved disciple experienced beneath the cross was a baptism of fire. So here you have Hiram Abiff, the builder of Solomon's temple. He's the Cain stream, and John the Baptist is from the Abel stream. You have these two uniting. You have Raphael Novalis, who were the continuation of that stream, these great artists. The poet sage Novalis was a forerunner of anthroposophy, as was the Count de Saint-Germain, who was an incarnation of Christian Rosenkreuz. These flowed into anthroposophy. But on either side, those who destroyed the Goetheanum were the backward Abel stream, embodied in Jesuitism, who only recognized the Jesus being and not the Christ, and the backward Cain stream, embodied in a form of Freemasonry that wants power and is not taking in the Christ impulse. So here those incarnations are depicted again. You have them related to the lily and the rose, and this marriage that was meant to happen between Novalis and Sophie von Kuhn, who was still a teenager when they met. She died young. He underwent an initiation at her grave. So the founding of the new mysteries, this double-dodecahedron was now metamorphosed into the foundation stone meditation. So after the tragic burning on the New Year's Eve, 1922, the foundation stone was metamorphosed into the foundation stone meditation and planted into the hearts of the 800 or so members of the Anthroposophical Society at the Christmas Foundation meeting. So this stone, which was a seed, as I expressed, of love, that has to do with the seed towards the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem is built from above downward with etheric forces. The entire building of the Goetheanum embodied etheric forces that stream in from the cosmic periphery. Everywhere you see those life forces in that building. So this ex Deo nascimur, in Christo morimur, per spiritum sanctum revivissimus. In the folk soul lecture cycle, Steiner gives these indications that old Saturn had to do with the germinal foundation for the physical body and human willing. Old Sun, the etheric body and feeling, and Old Moon, the astral and thinking. And on the earth itself, the eye was planted through the mystery of Golgotha. Old Saturn, the spirits called the thrones, who serve the Father God. On Old Sun, it's the Kyriates, who serve the Sun principle of the Trinity. On Old Moon, it's the Holy Spirit that is conveyed through the dunamis. And on the earth, it's the spirits of form, the Elohim, also called the exousiai, who descended into the body of Jesus at the baptism in the Jordan, that John, as a servant of Yahweh, presided over with the baptism of water. So Yahweh is the seventh of the Elohim who remained behind on the earth when the sun departed from the earth in the Hyperborean age. And the other six who went to the sun, they descended at that point. So now the foundation stone meditation addresses willing, feeling, thinking. And Steiner, in that lecture I referred to, speaks of how love, which is the mission of the whole earth, arises through a perfect balancing and complementarity of thinking, feeling, and willing, of truth, of beauty, and of goodness together. And that's how we then build a base for the chalice up above, where we reunite with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But each verse of the foundation stone starts with, O soul of man. So the deeper mystery is the soul of the Trinity, which is also threefold. And that Sophian aspect of the Trinity will only really come to the fore more fully in the future Sophian age, which is being prepared by the Russian Slavic people. So here, the last part of the foundation stone meditation at the turning point of time, the spirit light of the world entered the earthly stream of being. Darkness of night had ceased its reign. Day radiant light shone forth in human souls. Light that gives warmth to simple shepherds' hearts. Light that enlightens the wise heads of kings. O light divine, O Son of Christ, warm thou our hearts, enlighten thou our heads, that good may become what from our hearts we would found, and from our heads direct with single purpose. That's a slightly different translation than the one written there. So part of this new foundation stone meeting at the Christmas conference was to renew the Anthroposophical Society. Rudolf Steiner took on the presidency, the leadership, and gathered around him these other individuals, Marie Steiner, Ita Wegmann, Günther Wachsmuth, Albert Stephan, and Elizabeth Breda. During the course of this conference, every evening, there were lectures called World History in the Light of Anthroposophy. And the lecture given on the eve of New Year's, which was the anniversary of the burning of the Goetheanum, he spoke of the envy of the gods was involved in the destruction of the temple of Ephesus, which took place on the same day that you have the birth of Alexander the Great and the burning of the first Goetheanum, the envy of man. My dear friends, may this link our hearts to the old Goetheanum, which we had to consign to the elements. May it link our hearts also to the spirit, to the soul of the Goetheanum. With this vow before whatever is best within our being, we want to live on, not only into the new year, in strength of deed, bearing the spirit, leading the soul, we want to live on into the new cosmic new year. So this, speaking of the mystery temple of Ephesus, where the sculpture of the goddess Artemis, or Diana, as she's known in Roman terms, Steiner relates it to the Goetheanum. There you had the mystery of the word in the old version, when Michael still ruled over cosmic intelligence. And you had then the destruction by fire, Herostratus threw the torch into the temple. And this was related to the decline of the old mysteries. Just as you had this statue of the goddess at the very center in the back, the intention was in the Goetheanum to have this sculptural group that embodied the new solution to the mystery of evil in our time, located there. So here we have the sequence of incarnations. These are illuminated mostly in two sets of lectures. One is called Occult History, that was given in 1910 and from the 28th of December, I believe, or the 27th to the 1st of January 1911. And then in this series that was given during the Christmas conference. And there he spoke especially of these two individualities that had to do with Aristotle and this being of the Alexander the Great. I'm showing them again here. So he goes back to Ebani and Gilgamesh in Uruk, then to Ephesus, where Rudolf Steiner appeared as Cratylus and Ita Wegman as Misa. Then Aristotle is the reincarnation of Ebani and Cratylus, and Alexander is an earlier incarnation of Ita Wegman. Then you have Rudolf Steiner appearing in the 9th century as Shia and Ita Wegman as Zigune. Then Rudolf Steiner reappears as Thomas Aquinas and Ita Wegman as Reginald of Piperno. So you have these two individualities. Not all of this is made clear that it relates to Rudolf Steiner and Ita Wegman, but this becomes clear through the estate of Ita Wegman when it became available. And you can read about this in a book titled Rudolf Steiner's Mission and Ita Wegman by Margareta and Erich Kirschner Buchholz. When this first came out, it wasn't advertised. It was only, you had to request it, so you had to hear about it, and it was a numbered copy you got. Of course, now everything gets published out there, including the first class lessons. So here you have the Holy Spirit, Rudolf Steiner, this Sophian aspect of philosophia becoming anthroposophia. You have the 12 philosophical vantage points. I'm relating them to the 12 pearls that are spoken of as gateways to the New Jerusalem. And you can see how Spiritism by itself is Luciferic, materialism by itself is Ahrimanic. If you balance the two, which the Christ helps us to bring about, a dynamic balance, then they balance each other out and they're no longer dangerous. Idealism needs realism as a complementary at the left and right axis here. So one could go into each of these and speak of the importance of this new understanding of the mystery of good and evil. So the core of the Executive Council, the esoteric Vorstand, the relationship between Marie Steiner and Ita Wegman, soon became a source of contention. Rudolf Steiner revealed to Ita Wegman their karmic ties in Pennemoir, Wales, in August 1924. Marie Steiner did not know who Ita Wegman was, but she was jealous of the close relationship of Steiner and, quote, this Javian woman. Ita Wegman was born in Indonesia, who as a physician cared for Steiner. She knew that this was not a romance, but jealousy can be distinguished in higher motivations. Count Ludwig Pulsner-Hoditz, a sincere and decent Austrian anthroposophist, was one who tried to reconcile the two women after the death of Rudolf Steiner. He wrote down what Ita Wegman had told him in private. Marie Steiner came to see her after the death and asked her whether Rudolf Steiner had told her anything about incarnations. Wegman was a discreet person, and she hesitated. Marie Steiner said that it should be possible among esoteric persons to speak openly. Wegman told what Steiner had said to her. Then Marie Steiner got up abruptly and went away without a word. So here you also have, and this is the background to this is you can study it in Kindling the Word, Karmic Background of Marie Steiner von Sivers by Rahel Cairn and Brian Masters, published by Temple Lodge. And there we hear of the teacher of Rudolf Steiner in his incarnation as Thomas Aquinas was Albertus Magnus, which is a former incarnation of Marie Steiner. And if you go still further back, you hear of her as Hypatia of Alexandria, who underwent a martyr's death back then. And Steiner speaks of Hypatia in his occult history in Stuttgart back in 1910, which is around the same time he published his Occult Science and Outline. So here you have something about how already as the incarnation as Thomas Aquinas, we know through Rudolf Steiner that for the spiritual world, they called it spiritual economy, the precious transformed bodies of high initiates, and especially of the Jesus, the Christ being, were preserved and multiplied and then given as gifts. So to mention one just such example, Thomas Aquinas as a small child received an astral body of Christ when a bolt of lightning struck. It killed his little sister, who was lying in a cradle in the same room. But it made the boy's astral body elastic in order to receive the lofty astral body of Christ. We take into consideration the reincarnation of Thomas Aquinas of Rudolf Steiner, we can better understand the following words shared by the late Sergei Prokofiev in his book, May Human Beings Hear It. Quote, for only when we recognize that spiritually, having stood before the mystery of Golgotha in an innermost earnest celebration of knowledge, signified for Rudolf Steiner a real initiation into the Grail mysteries, meaning that out of the holy chalice he received into his own eye a replica of the Christ eye. It allows us to understand that in quite a concrete sense, he could call spiritual science a science of the Grail, and that modern initiates, and in first place, he himself can be designated as, quote, initiates of the Grail. In 1913, following the foundation stone laying of the Johannesbau, the Johannes building, as the first Goetheanum was called, in its forms, the thought content of the science of the Grail became visible to external vision for the first time. A thorough contemplation of the forms of the Johannesbau make it increasingly clear that the structure exhibits many features of a modern temple of the Grail. So part of the tragedy was after Rudolf Steiner's death, he wasn't able to consolidate the new Vorstand as long as he was a presence, helping to bridge the stream that Marie Steiner represented and Ita Wegman represented. This peace on earth and goodwill was still a part of the picture. The tension and conflict at the center of the anthroposophical leadership. Alfred Stephan, who became president of the Vorstand, also played a pivotal role in the dissension. Just before the cremation of Rudolf Steiner, Ita Wegman asked Stephan to tell Marie Steiner that she would like to transfer the urn not to Haus Hansi, where they had lived together, but uphill to the carpentry shop, Schreinerei. Stephan did not tell it to Marie Steiner. He had forgotten. Then they were all in the car after the cremation. Ita Wegman thought that Marie Steiner was informed, but she wasn't. The car did not turn to Haus Hansi, but went up the hill. Marie Steiner was shocked. She thought this was treason. Stephan remained silent. It was at this very moment in the car in front of the urn of Rudolf Steiner that the tragic dispute between the two women arose. And Stephan was the one in between the two women. Stephan later confided to Ludwig Polster-Hoditz in 1925 that he could only work with Frau Marie Steiner and not with Frau Ita Wegman. After the already referenced tragic events of 1935, a new schism erupted between Marie Steiner on the one side and Stephan and Wachsmuth on the other. So the schism 1935 involved Ita Wegman and Elizabeth Vrede being expelled from the society. So there are three blows of evil that caused real tragic consequences. One was the burning of the Goetheanum, which was perpetrated from outside. Then there was the self-inflicted wounds from 1935 with the expulsion of Ita Wegman and Vrede. We can hear, with the help of a book by Peter Selk, Elizabeth Vrede, Adversity, Resilience, and Spiritual Science, that the soul of Ita Wegman had previously incarnated as the head of the Templar order who had been burned at the stake, along with others. So this is related to an incarnation of Rudolf Steiner and Ita Wegman as Zigeuner in this Pietà gesture. And then Scienatolanda. Scienatolanda was really killed because of Parsival. Parsival's mother dressed him up as a fool. She sent him out and hoping that he would come back. She died of a broken heart, and he never turned back. She had told him that if you see a beautiful lady, to kiss her, and he came across a tent where there was a beautiful maiden. He followed his mother's advice, took a ring from her, etc. And after drinking and eating and leaving her somewhat disheveled, he left the tent. Her lover, Aurelius, came back and thought for sure she had betrayed him, and he rode off in extreme anger. But instead of running into Parsival, who he was after, he ran into Shionatalanda, who was the reincarnated Rudolf Steiner. And Rudolf Steiner, as Shionatalanda was killed, he then overlighted these Grail mysteries. Prior to that, he had had a deep and loving relationship with this young woman, Ziguna, who plays a key role in the Grail sequence as recorded by Wolfram von Eschenbach. It's she that's there when he leaves the first time from the Grail Castle, having not asked the critical question. And there she is in this Pietà situation with the dead Shionatalanda on her lap in a kind of Pietà image. Steiner speaks of this as a Grail image. The woman represents the moon, wisdom, carrying the future new sun impulse, the resurrection impulse. So one can see from what I shared earlier that Parsival was the same being who had been the youth of Zeiss, the youth of 9, raised from the dead by Christ, the Mani individuality, and then the Parsival individuality. So Rudolf Steiner had forged a very special relationship. He overlighted Parsival. And in Switzerland, where the Goetheanum was, in the very close vicinity, was this cave, which according to certain Grail research was where Ziguna and also the uncle of Parsival, who was the brother of Amfortas, had been the wise counselor of Parsival that helped to prepare him for his later visit. But it's this Ziguna who tells him his name. His mother, Parsival's mother, didn't want to share his real name because she didn't want him to become a knight because her husband had been killed as a knight. So that time, which Rudolf Steiner, we go back to this, Steiner says, I was obliged to incarnate in a stream completely foreign to me in order to acquire the Christian fervor which I needed for the Thomas incarnation. This was from a private sharing. So this took place during the the Raphael between 850 and 1190. And you could say that this set the stage for Ita Wegman to become a healer. This suffering, the death of her beloved. And there's a story of they're together outside a tent in a beautiful vale. And there's this little dog that shows up with a beautiful collar. And she asks Shionatalanda to catch the dog, which he does. And there's a secret script written on the leash. And they start to decipher it. But before they are finished deciphering, the dog escapes. And Shinatalanda is basically told, I'm not going to marry you until you help me to read the rest of that script. So you could say that Shinatalanda had to die to read the rest of that script. And this healing impulse that came from Raphael, the archangel that overlights the Easter mysteries, that also came into the Goetheanum. So you can see this staff of Mercury and the windows on either side leading from the west where you enter to the sculptural group in the middle. And Steiner spoke of a drama at Easter that should have happened there, but because of the destruction, wasn't able to happen. This is a picture from the first part of the Parzival epic by Wolfram von Eschenbach. You have this city of Petalamont, which could be said to mean petal mound. This is related to the 16 petal lotus. There's 8 gates on either side. So the dark army represents the old clairvoyants. Their leader has died. He had a helmet that was a diamond helmet. He still had the old inspirational connection to the spiritual world. And on the other side, you had Friedebrand, which relates to freedom and the new impulse of preparing the consciousness soul. And there, Parzival's father was involved, who marries the queen of Petalamont. And so this relates to the throat chakra, which has to do with the renewal of the mysteries of the word. And the Grail relates to gradalis, from dullness through doubt to blessedness. And we all have to kind of go through that. In each one of us lives both the Amfortas and the Parzival side of our nature. And here we have the forging of the Grail sword, the micrologos. What man speaks remains in the Akashic record. It is the germinal beginning of the future human being. Speech is one half of the former means of reproduction. Through speech, man propagates himself spiritually. The breaking of the male voice is connected with this. One half of what is sexual has been carried over into speech. The voice is the future organ of reproduction. In ancient Hebrew, the same word was used for sex and speech. Today, man thinks, and the thought passes outward through the larynx. The next stage will be that feeling, warmth, passes outward. The word will be the expression of the inner warmth of the body. Then not only the warmth-imbued word will go forth, but the word will remain, will be given form through the will, which then lives within it. Then when one utters the word, it becomes an actual being. So this is sort of the very last. Sorry to take so long to get to this point. And I thank you for your patience, for those who have remained awake and attentive. This just shows this development from the old group soul of the first coming. It's still being present, and under the quaternity of zodiac influences that in the foundation stone we hear north, south, east, and west. The elemental beings hear it. May human beings hear it. So the Christ speaks of, behold, I make all things new. That's happening through the second coming, which is related to the time we're living in, where individuation takes place. And Easter is held during Pisces, and Michaelmas associated with Virgo. And we have then Christmas and the summer festival of St. John's related to Sagittarius and Gemini. But we're preparing the future Sophian age, when the sun at Easter will rise in Aquarius, and it will rise in the fall at Michaelmas in Leo, and Scorpio and Taurus will be related then to the summer and winter solstices and those festival gateways. So if you put all of these three crosses together, you've got 12 gateways which lead to the New Jerusalem. And that's really what we have to take with us into this orientation to the preparation for the future Sophian age, the Philadelphia age, the age of brotherhood, is the celebration of these four festivals are gateways to the new sun mysteries that Rudolf Steiner sought to inaugurate. And the foundation stone has been planted in the hearts of those who take it and nurture it, so that Michael can take up his residence, so that the hearts can become sun-like and help to prepare the future planet of love. And the future community where 2 or 3 are gathered is the beginning of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, dear Florian, thank you so much for your super intense presentation, beautiful presentation with many slides. Do you need time to restore your voice a little bit?
I can drink just a bit here.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, dear friends, so do you know how to raise your hands? Yes. There is reactions in the bottom of your screen. If you click on it, it's another button, raise a hand. So we can make our virtual line. And yes. Okay, Robin is first. Robin, please.
Wow, Florian. So can you pull up that very last slide again for us, please? That basically kind of summarizes a thing, and we went kind of quick because I know you were trying to bring it to a close, but I have a quick question, please.
Sure. Is that the one you're referring to?
No, the one with the first coming, the second coming, the very, very last
Oh,
one.
this one. Yeah.
That one. Okay, so let me kind of walk through what I think I heard. I mean, the East, I understand that. That's the Easter, Aries, Pisces, and Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard you say the North was winter solstice and the South was summer solstice, correct?
Yes, and the festivals related to that, Midsummer, St. John's, and then the winter under the sign of Gabriel. That's then related to, in this case, Capricorn.
Yeah, okay. And then that would be when you talk about the winter mysteries, we're kind of going into that Christmas period as well.
Correct.
All right, and West is Michaelmas?
Yes, the West would be where the sun is setting on the one hand, but if you think of north, south, east, west, but it's also the gateway of the fall season, where Michaelmas is involved. So you have a different configuration in the daily cycle as opposed to the yearly cycle.
Correct.
So Rudolf Steiner says, what is one day-night cycle for us is a yearly cycle for the planetary spirit, which is the Christ being.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that helped clarify, because that picture kind of sums up a whole lot of things. The last question I have, and I don't know how comfortable you feel with this, but there are so many beautiful slides here. Do you ever make that slide deck available to folks that have listened in?
Sure. Yeah, I've done it in the past, and I sometimes get busy, but I can, if you email me at floriansydow@gmail.com, I can do my best to get that to you.
That would be beautiful. I tried to take as many notes, but there may be others like me who, now if we go back and re-listen to it and have the ability to write notes on the slides, it would be great. Thank you so much, Florian. This was beautiful.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay, so Nicola, go ahead. Nicola, please unmute your machine.
Thank you very much, Florian. That was certainly an intense whistle-stop through a lot. So yeah, I mean, I'd be glad of the PowerPoints. I mean, I just took screenshots repeatedly, and we'll go back, but that would be good. I've got a general question, really. You referred at some point to this collective crossing of the threshold having begun in the 1840s. And this is something that I have not understood, and I would be glad of clarification what that actually means. I mean,
sure. I think this is really one of the most important areas of esoteric knowledge for our time. Steiner speaks of this in the 4 lectures that are titled Sophia Isis. There's, I think, 4 lectures. You're probably familiar with that. It was given around Christmas time as well.
Search for new Isis. Search for new Isis.
Yeah, search for a new Isis Sophia. And in one of those lectures, he speaks of how this is a very important area of knowledge for anthroposophists to help others outside of anthroposophy to grasp, because he says there all of humanity has been crossing the threshold since the 1840s. This is when the war in heaven began, where Michael battles with the spirits of darkness. This is the height of materialism. And it's because of these spirits of darkness obscuring our view of the etheric and astral and higher worlds that the Kali Yuga has been ever darkening. And that it's by casting down these spirits, which culminated in their defeat in 1879. And that's the dawning of the Michael age. That is the collective crossing of the threshold, where these spirits now are not up there in the heavenly heights, but have been cast down to the earth, and they seek to enter into human souls from the unconscious level. And they're the ones who create this distortion of thinking, feeling, and willing that the 3 beasts that you hear about in the first class or in that red window on the left is depicted, that we're subject to when we cross the threshold. In the Apocalypse course, he sheds some light on this when he's talking about the 10th chapter, which occurs in relation to the sounding of the 6th trumpet. And there you have the being with 1 foot on the water, 1 foot on the dry land. His countenance is like a sun, He has a rainbow above his head. He has a cloud and an upper body. And he has a book in his hands that he's offering. And there's 7 thunders that utter their voices, that resound. And John is about to take and receive that book. And he does, he takes it up and he eats it. And it's like honey in his mouth, but it's bitter in his belly. And he begins to write down what this experience brings to him, because there's 7 mysteries that are being uttered by the 7 thunders, but he's told not to write them down. These are secrets for our time and have to do with what Steiner called the 7 unutterable mysteries, or 7 unutterable truths. So for our age, it's the mystery of evil is the unutterable truth. For the 6th age, it's the mysteries of the Logos that we're called to prepare, that Johannes, the beloved disciple, the 2 Johns are preparing. And so you have this collective crossing of the threshold. In that apocalyptic course, we have to go through the middle between those 2 legs of this being, which Emil Bach, in his beautiful interpretation of that apocalypse, relates to we have to go through to the Michael being, who is the guardian of the threshold. And in the Rosicrucian seal, which is the 4th one, these pillars are the Joachim and Boaz pillars that were also there in the Munich Congress on either side of where Rudolf Steiner spoke in the podium. And the one has a J on it for Joachim, the other has a B for Boaz. These were related to the pillars of Solomon's temple. So at the entry to Solomon's temple were these 2 pillars called Joachim and Boaz. And that was the entry porch. And these were, of course, Hiram Abiff had fashioned these. And so we have to go through that straight and narrow path. Later in the book of Revelation, the 7-headed 10-horned dragon arises out of the water where the 1 foot is. And the 2-horned beast later arises out of where the other dry land pillar is. And Steiner indicated in this apocalypse course, one can imagine this being having 1 foot on the Pacific Ocean and the other on the Andes Mountains. And so humanity is passing into this Pacific era. Steiner said that there's a shift from geographically from the center of gravity of world evolution, from being there in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean and Europe to the Pacific Ocean. And that this will give birth to a world culture, which we can see. It's not now the old East that's east of us, but it's the East that's west of us. China, India, they're coming into their own. They're not just colonial underlords, but they're coming into their own. And there's a conflict between East and West that broke out in the Second World War here in Hawaii, for example. So we have an important task, because the ring of fire around the Pacific is really the remnants of the wound from when the moon left the earth in the Lemurian period. And the volcanism here in Hawaii, the fire forces here have to do with the warmth ether as opposed to the etheric forces that run along the north-south mountain ranges on the west coast of the United States, where the Ahrimanic forces are particularly strong, where a lot of the technologies that are dominating our time are coming from. And so we're in the midst of this battle for a future world culture that arises out of a marriage of East and West. But we have to cross this threshold and we have to meet the lower guardian. And the fact that the Vorstand that Rudolf Steiner selected by from among all of these people failed means that we have to go to plant B, I feel, which was embodied in the Goetheanum. The secrets embodied in the Goetheanum. That foundation stone meditation is the seed for what the Goetheanum represented, that was written in the cosmic ether. And that's where Rudolf Steiner is the guardian of the new mysteries. He's there. And he tells us in the past that when the Ephesus burned, this Ephesian mysteries were written in the etheric Akashic world. And from reading it, Alexander the Great and Aristotle were able to bring it down and bring it logos into logic, the 10 categories. So the mysteries were closed. Rudolf Steiner helped to close the mystery as Aristotle. Now, as Rudolf Steiner, he's reopening the mysteries. So that's part of the threshold. But we have to find courage. When he spoke after the fire to Count Pölzner-Hoditz, Steiner kept all his appointments. He kept the lectures going. The mystery play kept going. He said to Pölzner-Hoditz when he asked, well, how could this happen? The members were asleep. They weren't awake. But those who were awake were those who expressed the jealousy of men and took the initiative to burn the building. So being awake means bringing light into the darkness of the abyss that we have to cross when we cross the threshold. That raises fear, and fear keeps us from looking into that abyss. But as a result, then tragedy has to come to wake us up, rather than waking up through the mysteries that we're given through knowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is over my head in a way, but there's something that came through from your description that helped me to sense something, which is to do with this separation of the thinking, feeling, and willing, and how to go through to the other side. I've been very helped by a very short prayer which a biographical counselor gave me, which is the one to Michael. To your protection, I commend myself. To your guidance, I join myself with all my heart's power. That this day may unfold as a manifestation of your divine ordering will, the will of divine love. And yeah, so yeah, no, I that was very helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Just one more thing was that on this macrocosmic level of collective crossing of the threshold, he says that the Eastern humanity has to do with thinking. Middle European humanity, the feeling. And the West, especially America, but already Western Europe, with the will. And so just like there's a separation of thinking, feeling, and willing on a planetary level, on a collective level, there's a separation of East, Middle, and West. Mm-hmm. And Middle Europe is meant to create the balance. but the middle came under attack in the First World War, in the Second World War, and so it couldn't do its job, which Steiner had tried to prepare, and that led to the Cold War between the Soviet Union and its allies, and America and its allies, and Europe kind of was not able to prevent this and maintain balance. So now we're in a new era where history is tending to repeat itself. He warned that it was important that Europe doesn't become Americanized, because Europe has its own special mission, but through technology, Europe is being Americanized in a way, and that weakens. So that's another picture. He said the threefold social order was needed to help to bring about this balancing of the three on an individual and collective level.
I had an impulse which I tried to bring about but wasn't able to, because it wasn't my major thing, was actually to bring the Rilke's Duino elegies to New York, to the is it the Cathedral of St. John in New York? And the idea was to have it in German and in English translation, because my sense is that I mean, certainly the UK and America, the domination of the English language has meant that so much of what is in the middle European soul is that there's no idea, very little idea in America and England. But my main work is with mathematics. So but I heard someone say once that Rudolf Steiner said that if one initiates an impulse, even if you don't manage to push it through yet, one thing is to keep on trying, but another is that the work has begun. It's not actually lost. It has actually begun, and something has happened as a result. So maybe something has, even though I have not, I didn't manage to complete that. And as I say, we in Emerson College we have a sacred maths research group, and we've created a CIC, Mathematics and Mythos, and so that is an initiative which is going forward. So we do what we can. But, I mean that whole what you brought about this, the image of the Pacific, one foot in the Pacific and the Andes Mountains, is very powerful. I've not heard of that. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Dear friends, we are working already 2 hours and 12 minutes. So, thank you, Nicola. Thank you, everybody. And I feel it's time to conclude and wish to each other Happy New Year. So I've got text. It's people already passed New Year in Romania. They did it also in Russia. So, and we are pretty close. So I have to visit my mom and say Happy New Year too. So, dear Florian, thank you so much for your, as usual, very intense and very detailed presentation. It's precious. And I'm wondering if I can have, and maybe later distribute PDFs of your files,
Sure.
PDF of your slides.
Sure.
So, and I actually tending to publish it. I think it will be a good idea to publish it. It's explained so much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, dear friends. Again, best wishes from here, from Chicago and from Hawaii, for your best experience of 12 Holy Nights and Happy New Year. And please feel free to unmute your machines and say a big thank you to our dear Florian.
Thank you, Florian. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Florian. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Florian.
Thank you so much, Florian.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Mahalo.
The session is recorded, and I will promise it will appear soon on our website.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Ola
Happy New Year.
makahiki.
Happy New Year.
Resonant hearts.
And thank you, Bart. I'll look for your Men reading book. Thank you. And thank you.
And what a gift for the Holy Nights that we were given today. Thank you so much, Florian.
Well, thank you for your questions as well and contributions.
Good night, dear friends.
Thank you.